the reason it's called dog fooding is that if you use your own product, you you're familiar with it, right? And this is why Bill Gates and Microsoft made a phone, and it was a smartphone, but all the Microsoft employees were using the iPhone. And so Bill Gates banned the iPhone. And he said, you can't have an iPhone at Microsoft. And this pissed everybody off. And it meant that they had to use the Microsoft phone, which was terrible. And so that's how they knew internally just how bad the Microsoft phone was. So by us using video to sell our course on video, I think it's proof to people that we practice what we preach and just how much we believe in this medium. So that's why I've loved that. And what's also, I think, one of the big takeaways and so interesting about that is, one of the core aspects of this course is something called a hello video, which is an informal video you send to friends and family. And it's just to get you experience on camera. But what's so interesting is that even something where you don't talk too much about business, but where you just have your face and your warmth and your voice and the connection that humanity, that video allows, even as we try to sell this course, people have responded saying, hey, I loved getting just, hearing a video that was meant for me. It wasn't faceless and meant for everybody. It was meant for me. It made me feel great. And I love it when business can connect in a very human way, right? I'm a businessman and I like that kind of stuff, but I think business at its core is about people and friendships and connections. And I love it when it can be that way. I really hate impersonal kind of stuff. And I really hate huckster kind of overselling marketing stuff. So I love it that we're using video to sell our course, right? I think it's a really cool manifestation.
Yes, absolutely. So for our listeners, so this is Cam Hauser and I'm Julia Saxena, and we are launching a course together called Minimum Viable Video that starts on November 17th. And yeah, we just want to have a conversation exploring how the launch of the course is going, what's special about this course, and why now is the right time for people to start getting into video. And yeah, what I really found interesting about that, what you just said regarding the launch, using personal videos to drive sales and students to us. So how are you reflecting on the launch so far? What has been the highs and the lows?
First off, I'm super pumped to be here in this conversation just because I love this kind of work. So again, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm pumped we're building this thing together. As for the launch, here's the thing about launching anything. It's impossible doing it without it being a huge pain in the butt and without getting nervous about it. These things, there's people who I admire in the education and ed tech world and the startup world who, no matter how successful they are, they still, it's a pain. But the reason it's a pain is that you're doing really, really good work. So I'm loving it. It's definitely been stressful, but it's just one of those things where I am very much, and this goes into my educational philosophy as well, I'm a big fan of start sooner than you're ready, and you are going to learn so much along the way. And this launch has been no different, right? There's some stuff we plan to do all along. Like we'd certainly plan to use video to sell this course on video, and even in the very personal way that we've talked about, and we'll talk about more in this session. But other things like, building custom animations just to sell the course, right? Or guest speaking in other people's courses, or doing more podcasts than I never thought of. It's already been a joy. It's been funny to have our cat Pinky play a really pivotal role in the launch. And so that when we started this launch, I did not think that my cat was going to be featured on the national television station of Belize. Yet that has happened. And I was so it's just, there's things you would never expect, but you get great learning from it. And it just makes me glad that we're charging ahead and powering through it versus over strategizing and over theorizing for weeks and months and years, which ironically, I think is something people do with video a lot. They think about it before they get started, which I think is a nice segue into exactly why we're building this, to give people a structure and a process to learn video and have it advance all the work that they're doing.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I like what you're saying, that when you feel kind of nervous about it and very excited about it, and that's a sign for you that you're building something really exciting and that you're onto something special. So what was a trigger in the first place that made you want to build this course and teach people about video?
So this goes back to why did I get into video in the first place? And the reason I did was I got fibromyalgia. It's a kind of chronic illness that affects your soft tissues. And I was a musician and played in a lot of bands, and it started getting in the way of my ability to play instruments. And then it started getting in the way of my ability to type. And for me, I've always aspired to be a creative person, and I just like making things. I have this weird feeling of I don't want to be just a consumer. I don't want to just have information and content and entertainment go into me. I feel like I'm making a better mark on the universe and kind of chasing my goals if I'm also producing. And so the channels I had to produce was going down, and video was available to me because it didn't cause me any pain to talk. And so I started doing it very informally, just with friends. And then as I got better, I kind of spent all this time reading books, watching YouTube videos, so much time to learn this art and being in front of the camera, that I started using it in other avenues, in my work life, as an entrepreneur trying to grow my business, working with different startups. And then really interesting stuff happened. And we'll get into some more of these stories, but I had situations where I got really great opportunities by doing it. I had to get in contact with people who I cared about and wanted to interact with or do business with, or a company I wanted to partner with, or a big customer I was trying to sell. And once it started giving me all these benefits and advantages, I was like, wait a second, my background is that of an entrepreneurship educator and an education entrepreneur. I bet other people would like this. And so then I started testing it. I started teaching this stuff to my friends, and they started getting results immediately. They started realizing, wow, Cam, it is really powerful if you send someone a video. And that was when I had the spark. That combined with Rite of Passage, this phenomenal class about learning how to write online and meeting a great community. These things together, and my previous experience as an education entrepreneur, it all came together, and I realized there was something big here. And that was the motivation that really led me to start it.
Yeah, I would love to dig a bit deeper into that and into your kind of like teaching approach, because I get the feeling, or I already know that it's a bit different than maybe the classic professor. So yeah. Can you tell us more about like how are you planning to run the course? And
okay, this is I could talk about this all day, and I won't. I'll keep this at a reasonable length. But my grandfather was a principal in high school, and that he ran a high school, and I was never a great student. I was always fine. I was just like very much in the middle. And when my first jobs in my 20s was working at startups, and I learned so much by being in situations where I could do, right? And I realized that, wow, I'm much better in this environment based on doing rather than kind of the academic environment. But it was for career reasons. I went to grad school and I went to business school. And in business school, they were teaching startups. And I had just come from the startup world. So I felt like I knew that world really well. And what they were teaching me was so theoretical and so high level and abstract. It wasn't really connected to results. And it just drove me crazy. I was just, I had just come from the trenches of fast growing startups. I was the fourth employee in a company that grew to 120 people. So I just learned a ton. And what I was hearing was seemed extremely oversimplifying, and frameworks and models that didn't resonate. And so I said, you know what, I don't really like this. I met some other students who were also grad students and felt the exact same way. And so we started this organization called 3 Day Startup. And the whole premise behind this company was that the best way to learn how to be an entrepreneur, a startup founder, is to start a company. So even if you start the dumbest company with the worst idea ever, you'll learn more than reading a case study about Facebook or Snapchat or something like that. So this started as a student organization, and we turned it to an organization at the University of Texas that became a company in Austin. And then we started closing more and more deals and selling to universities, to where I was the CEO and founder for a decade. And by the end of that decade, the company was in 50 countries. We'd run this 3-day entrepreneurship program 500 times, and it was all about doing. And I think the success of that company was a validation of that model, the model of pragmatic learning by doing, and that instead of giving someone, here's the answers, now you've got it, instead of, you know what, we're not going to give you the answers, we're going to give you an opportunity and a structure and a space to do. And in the doing part of it, you'll learn. So that was a really big deal. There's an interesting connection to my world as a professor in all this. So I have always, I love helping young people realize their potential. That's always been something that motivated me a lot. And there was some interesting opportunities to help guest speak in classes as I was doing this work because we were so connected to universities. And what's interesting is that when I was in grad school getting my MBA, I had to take accounting. And I got the worst grade in the entire accounting class. A few years later, after doing some guest speaking, the folks at the University of Texas asked if I would teach entrepreneurship. And I was interested in that because I love that kind of work. Also, my biggest customers were foreign governments, and foreign governments love it if you're a professor at a tier 1 research university. It gives you some social capital and prestige to help you close deals. So everything was aligned here. But what I just love is that the first course that I taught as a professor was the exact same classroom where I got a D in accounting. So to me, I found this very interesting validation of my philosophy of education, that when I was a student, I was failing. Yet this pragmatic approach based on doing, and that you don't need to have all the answers. And in fact, you don't even need to learn from subject matter experts, that your own experience and collaborative learning, that these two things can make someone be fantastic at what it is they do. The success of this model meant that they asked me to come teach, and I was literally in the exact same classroom where I had failed. So it was just quite a turnaround and a great validation of that model. But I think that higher ed and just education systems in general leave a lot to be desired. I feel like the world of technology has evolved. I feel like YouTube is a phenomenal learning platform. And when people think of YouTube, they think of cat videos. And I love cat videos, but there is such great learning. Like, for example, in the NBA, NBA players grew up watching YouTube clips of other NBA players, and no one in the education world talks about this kind of stuff. So what I love about minimum viable video, and what inspired me to do this, is all of my experience as an educator in the traditional educational system, but all of my experience outside of that, of which I have a lot. And so what this course does is it combines the best of both those worlds, along with having a background as a startup entrepreneur and a technologist. So it's just combining all the things that I think are most effective. And why a thing I loved about teaching 3-day startup was that students would say, listen, I learned more in 3 days than I did in my entire college career. Well, this is exactly the same thing that we're doing, just with better community and better technology. So anyway, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I get really excited about this stuff, and I can just go forever about it.
No, I love it. I love it really, because we both have been in rite of passage, and we've seen the power of working and building together in a community and growing together. So can you tell me more about that, maybe the community aspect of kind of working together and giving each other feedback along the way, and how that helps people improve?
Sure, I'll start with community and kind of then get into feedback. Community is it's a weird word. And there's a reason that a lot of courses don't lead by talking about that, because community is a very soft word. And when you hear about online communities, a lot of times that's how they describe social networks as well. Whereas a lot of the YouTube community, there's plenty of racist comments in YouTube, right? So it doesn't always feel like a community. But community just means that you are getting the learning from the full set of people. And it's not just the expert. In academia, they call this the sage on the stage. The idea that a smart person with a PhD comes in and tells you how it works. That is not a community-driven approach to learning. Community-driven approach to learning is such that, as the leader of this course, I'll say something interesting, but then you might say, Cam, that's great. That reminds me of this one time I saw this. And that thing that you add to the conversation is more useful to the audience than what I said. Right. And I think this is one reason professors have problems with this new approach to learning, is it takes some of the power away from them and some of the prestige away from them. But honestly, the wisdom of crowds, the idea that the collective brain power of 30 people is better than the brain power of one genius. I agree with that very, very strongly. And I was able to see that firsthand in the companies that I've run. Right. So with 3-day startup, this entrepreneurship program, we had exits to Google and Etsy. We had companies raise a total of 187 million. The leading payment processor in Southeast Asia came through this program. The first and most successful ride-sharing company in Germany before Uber came through this program. So we had lots of successes that validated this model of learning from other people. The other thing about it is, if you're trying to make your dent in the universe, if you're trying to grow your company, if you're trying to be great in your job and make an impact, sometimes that can be lonely, right? Sometimes it's not, information is not just the problem. Sometimes the problem is also you just want to be surrounded by people who get you. And video is like very much one of those things, right? My friends are kind of like sick of me saying, hey, watch my video, give me feedback on it, right? Whereas when you're with a community of other people who care about that, they also care about video. So they're happy to do that, right? And I've been able to cultivate this sort of thing externally on my own because I've been doing it a long time. But at this point, just from my previous experience and what we're building in terms of who we're attracting to this course, it's a community of people who can give you feedback, and it can be useful. And we'll have all kinds of different people in this course, right? We'll have some college students up to career professionals who are 3 decades deep into a very successful career. And they have very different perspectives they can offer. And that gets us into the feedback piece, right? Is that they can give you good feedback. And we'll also, startup entrepreneurs live and die by feedback, being able to assess it and gauge it correctly. And we'll be doing the same thing, giving a framework of how to deal with that. But feedback is what makes a video good. Another thing that you and I have talked about a lot, Julia, is the spotlight effect. And an example of this is I learned early on in video, I would have like, my hair would be in the wrong place or something. And I'd be like, oh, I need to re-record the whole video. And that's hard, right? Well, it turns out like a lot of times people don't notice those things. And instead they notice something totally different. What they notice is that maybe you're speaking too fast or speaking too slow, or maybe like, some days when I'm filming, I would like film a bunch and then I would see that I had spilled some food on my shirt and I'd be like, oh God, all that footage wasted. And no one would notice, right? So that's the other thing, is that feedback from a community allows people to tell you what's memorable about your work, and it helps you hone in on what's important, because it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of all these other things that don't really matter. And the best way to get this is not by thinking harder about it or reading blog posts about it. The best way to get this is to make content that people watch. And one of the things that I'm really pumped about is we're creating this incubator where people can give you feedback on it before you share it with the world. Because as you know, when you're early in making something and you share it with the world, it's scary. What if they tell you that the thing you make, your baby, the thing you care about so much, what if they tell you just that, well, that's really ugly? And that's what I think is also really cool about this, is there's some kind of security and safety by getting this good group of people together who's roughly at the same level, and we're all peers together in this journey. And I just think that's a really key part that online learning gets, that a lot of higher ed really fails at. They don't really understand the power of bonding people together in that way.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that. Like when I started also producing or creating online kind of my writing, I would never have continued publishing if I wouldn't have gotten the like feedback and just encouragement from other people. That, because you're always thinking like, is this even like any good what I'm putting out? And if just one person actually says like, yeah, this is good, please keep doing it, that means so much.
Yeah, in the early days, a like on your video is a huge deal. In the early days, someone saying, hey, thanks for making this, that's a really, really big deal. And back to kind of my educational philosophy, there's this fancy term called the Staton Law. And it's an education term that says there's a certain amount of anxiety a learner should feel. And it doesn't mean like anxiety like they're having a panic attack. It just means how much emotional charge they have when they're learning. And here's the thing, if they're too hype and they're too nervous, they don't learn enough. If they're too laid back and they're too relaxed, they don't learn either. There's an optimal state. And the Staton Law is like saying, hey, there's an optimal state. And that's another thing I've learned, is that as an educator, managing that has been more important than communicating the right information. So if I can manage that state in people, and I feel like I'm pretty good at this point because I've been teaching for a long time, if I'm creating that right spirit in our cohort, we're cruising. Motivation is high and we're really energetic and charging ahead. And that's what fuels you to keep doing. Whereas if it feels too relaxed, then people don't always get their assignments in. But if they're too tense because I'm being a drill sergeant, that's not really the spirit either, right? So there's this is something that, again, I don't think a lot of normal educators can really fathom. A lot of them think, oh, well, I need to get up and give a lecture about this topic. And that's just one more reason why I don't really believe in lecture-based education.
Yeah. What I found in that regard, also what kind of motivates people and gets people pumped, is to work towards a goal, to work towards a common goal. And with video, it's kind of like showing yourself, like becoming more public, and almost, you used the term before, like kind of cloning yourself. So what do you think is kind of like the the best outcomes? What are our students kind of like working towards with their videos?
That's a great question. It's a varied outcomes in terms of it depends on the person, but all of them involve being able to be more productive, be more effective, and advance at whatever it is they care about. So there's one gentleman who's like strongly considering taking the course, and he wants to build a wine channel, like a wine channel on YouTube. And that's not really connected to his growth as a professional, but it's connected to his growth as someone who can enjoy life, right? Which I thought that was really interesting, because most of the wiring of this course is around how to grow your career or how to grow your company if you're an entrepreneur, right? And this gentleman just wanted to make sure that he was, producing and being creative, but also in a way that seemed modern. I mean, he didn't want to like become a blacksmith or start making leather in his garage, right? He wanted to start a channel. But most of what kind of the goals that the other students are setting is they want to distinguish themselves. Some of them are at the beginning of a career and they're working, and that's fine. They've got a job title. But right now, if they were interviewing for their next job, they wouldn't have anything that really makes them unique or interesting compared to other candidates. Whereas they know, they totally get it. They get the vision that if they have a history of producing thoughtful, professionally done videos that are online, reflecting their ideas, their worldviews, and doing so in a high resolution way. They're not in a cavern. It's not shaky cam because they're in the park and the cameras bouncing all over the place. They know that that's the kind of thing that when an employer Googles them, they're going to see. And back to entrepreneurs, I think any sort of professional life, but especially an entrepreneur, like you need to be able to tell your story, and you need to be able to say why your product or service or whatever you do is better. And right now they have some of those pieces, but they're not all nicely assembled. And that's kind of the promise of what we're offering, is that when they're done with this course, they've got elegantly produced, really well delivered stories that tell what it is they do, right? So maybe you're an accountant and there are lots of accountants. So how do you explain why you're unique and really good at what you do? The thing about, a resume is one thing, but this accountant can say, listen, I had a client who hadn't paid their taxes for 3 years. And that's tough. That means there's going to be some challenges with that. So what I did was not only gave them the strategy, but I helped them emotionally navigate the fact that clearly they were procrastinating on something big here for a reason. And these are the sorts of things that don't show up in a job interview that often. They don't show up in a resume. But having that sort of thing online is something that a new client will see and say, this person clearly has gifts beyond just the simple skills of being really proficient in Excel, right? And I think everyone gets just how powerful video can be. And what we're doing is giving people the expertise, structure, accountability, and it's just a lot more fun to do with a group of people, per my earlier comments about the community, right? We're giving them all of that. And that's what I get really excited about when I think about what you and I are building.
Yeah. Okay, let me challenge you there a little bit. So why couldn't anybody accomplish that by writing blog posts? Isn't that
that's a
kind of the same?
Okay, so a blog post is confined in something called text. Text there's no richness there, right? I find it, like, again, I live and die by email like any modern professional, and writing really thoughtful, nuanced emails for me is quite difficult. Whereas when I'm on camera, I can show facial expressions. And by the way, I had to learn how to do this, right? And in fact, if you ask, Cam, why do we need this course to learn this stuff? I spent so much time on YouTube having to like watch a million tutorials and learn all this stuff the hard way. Where we are now with kind of technology and all the kind of the kind of hurdles I had to go over, I'm just kind of bottling all this up and distilling it down so you can get this. But a blog post, like, there's a lot of blog posts out there, right? Whereas video, it conveys you a lot better. And one of my really ardent beliefs is that we don't really want to connect with companies and large brands. We want to connect with human beings. And video is the richest medium, right? You can convey laughter and joy and smiles and frowns. And it just does that so much better than writing does, right? So, and also once you get good at video, you can produce it at a much faster clip. Quality writing is a very slow process, whereas video, once you get the muscle memory in place and your production set up and all that stuff, all the stuff we're going to teach you, it becomes a very, very fast medium. And that's what I think is really exciting about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sold on that, but now what if I'm super awkward on camera?
Okay.
I feel really shy and I don't know what to say.
Okay. So that I think is actually a very legitimate concern, because we're all born with different skills, right? Some people are incredibly magnetic and just light up a screen. Other people, it is a struggle. They are just, it just doesn't flow when they're in front of the camera. And so I'm very much a belief that like everything is learnable, but some people get things instantly and other people need more time. What I find in both those cases is some people are really magnetic, but the technical side of it is incredibly intimidating to them, right? And what I like about experiential education is and learning by doing, kind of the way I teach it, is that if you already know how to light up a room, great, we can give you the more technical and the other kind of things to work on. Whereas if you are more technical, we can give you the other sides of things. And I'm just using kind of delivery, performance, and technical interchangeably. There's plenty of other arenas on that. Some, there's the visually how you frame things. There's the content of what you actually say. The point is that experiential education means you get to learn the thing that you need. That being said, some of you, if you want to get good on video and you suck at it now, you might suck at it for a while. But the thing is, you need to suck at it to get out of that stage. And what I like is, if I'm going to suck at things that I've sucked at, I still suck at plenty of things. I like doing a community of people that I feel some kind of trust with. And that to me is another really important thing about online education, is I want to try to build that sense, that community and sense of support in the cohort, which is great in this style of education. It's hard to do that in the formal higher ed college because everyone's competing for the same grade. Whereas this is a positive sum game, online education. So you may just suck at being on camera for a while, and it might go longer than you want, but that's the only way to get through that. The other thing is that you may find out that even though you can get over being on camera, you really dislike it. It's something about it just saps your energy, and in which case, the style known as a video essay, right? A video essay is when you have animated graphics and you are never actually on camera. It's just your voice, right? Or you write it and you hire someone else, a voice performer, to read out what you wrote. But these are all the things that you can learn by going through this process, right? It's hard you want a structured framework to figure out what works for you. But it might turn out that that's your thing. Now, I don't think it will, because I think, again, everyone can learn this, but that is very well possible that you may just find out that being in front of the camera is the place you don't want to be, and that you do your best work when you're just writing and coordinating all of that great work, right?
Yeah. Where do you see minimum viable video going? Like, what is your vision for the course?
So something I've noticed in a few online communities, including Rite of Passage, is these really strong partnerships being formed, these brain trusts of people. And I think you and I are that in many senses, right? You and I have complementary skills. Like, this course brought us together, and we have complementary skills that allows each of us to focus on things we're good at, right? And support each other. I want minimum viable video to build similar types of relationships between people and at mass. So I want to empower people to improve their careers and get really good at this medium and get the clout and benefit and financial gains and all the good stuff from that. But in addition to that, have it connect them to a great community of people, because I think that's also the thing that can't be copied, right? It's, again, not an informational problem. It's the thing that if you have, so for example, let's say that I was making a really big pitch to someone, and of course, like, I nailed the video part, but I need more help with my written communication. Like, I could ask you for help and you would help me. And in the same way that, let's say that, you had an intro video you were creating and you just needed a little help on the music side of things, like, and I could help you with that, right? You and I have that sort of partnership. And I want to spawn more of those types of partnerships between more people, so that they have other folks like that can help them be more impactful. Because I feel like in some ways, the way I approach the world, it's not fair. It's like I have these great groups of people behind me that I can ask for advice and guidance. And I've done that by, developing my own skills and trying to pay it forward and be helpful and collaborative. But a lot of people in their professional lives, they're just navigating it solo, right? They have themselves, and if they know to Google things, they know how to Google things. But a lot of their friends, maybe they haven't set up those sorts of friendships, or they have no peers who work in their industry. Whereas I love cultivating really smart groups of people. And I think that's another kind of just way human beings are going to interact. So I want to build that. And just to get more concrete, I want to get to larger and larger cohorts. I want more and greater output coming. And I want the internet full of brilliant, insightful things that are advancing the lives and careers of all kinds of people who are just realizing that they can do more than they thought they could.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to get started and to transform our students' lives with video.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great point to end on. So thank you so much for coming and having this conversation.
Excellent, for sure. Cheers.